Welcome back to Wild Treasures, our series that celebrates South Africa's conservation efforts. Now, BirdLife SA is an organization with the sole purpose of protecting and creating awareness on the plight that our country's birds faces. BirdLife South Africa is part of an international organization with a mission to promote the study, understanding and conservation of wild birds in South Africa.
BirdLife South Africa, we're part of an international organization called BirdLife International, and we've got 120 partners around the world that all have the same objectives, and that's really to save species and to save habitats, but also to work with people, so local communities, school children to do education, and of course aviatourism to work with the birders.
The organization has well over 5,000 members, and it's also affiliated with 32 bird clubs in the country. Their primary objective is to prevent extinction of any bird species and to improve the conservation status of all bird species. Conservation Manager Hanneline Smith-Robinson outlines some of her duties and responsibilities for us in this tough portfolio.
As a conservation manager, it basically means jack of all trades, but really looking after our bird species. And we have a similar team looking after the habitats for the bird species, and we collaborate quite closely. That's the Important Bird and Biodiversity Areas program. So I look mostly at our most threatened species in the category of critically endangered, endangered and vulnerable. But we also run a program to look at species which are still very common, and that we call a citizen scientist project. So we want to have more information on all our bird species to keep them common.
Just like our land animals, birds also have an important role to play in our ecosystem and are seen as indicators of the state of our environment. They also form an integral part of our culture and of course have inspired artists in spheres, making them key elements in generating revenue towards our ecotourism. Birdwatching is also a growing economic force in South Africa.
Birds are very important in the ecosystem, just as every individual species is. But what makes birds so attractive is that they're so easy to see. They're easy to see even in the urban environment. But our birds are also indicators of the health of the environment. So if we look at, for example, our raptor species, most of our eagles and our falcons and our hawks, vultures, they really tell us how good it's going with the environment. So they're apex predators right at the top of the ecosystem. And if there's rodenticides or pesticides that's causing a problem lower down in the ecosystem, those raptors will actually disappear.
BirdLife may not have a program to conserve the African crowned eagle, but have highlighted the plight this raptor faces and their declining populations.
So we support some of the projects on crowned eagles, but we don't work directly on this species. But last year we published our national Red Data book, which is called the Eskom Red Data Book of Birds of South Africa, Lesotho and Swaziland. And in that, sadly, the crowned eagle was actually uplisted from being near threatened to now being vulnerable. So that's telling us it's actually not going that well with the crowned eagle. But compared to most of our raptor species, it's still doing okay. 25%, so a quarter of all our raptor species are now threatened. So they're either critically endangered or vulnerable, like in those very, very highest categories. Crowned eagles catch their own food, so they're not obligate scavengers, so they're not so exposed to poisons, which is a real big problem for most of our other raptor species. And they're limited to forest habitat, but they're also quite adaptable. So we find them even in some of our invasive or the alien forests. But in South Africa, the strongholds for them would be in the Eastern Cape and in KwaZulu-Natal, and then also in that Nelspruit, Mpumalanga area. And we estimate that we have less than 1,000 mature individuals left in this country.
Places that have a rich bird species often have other rich forms of biodiversity, so it is important that a healthy habitat for our birds is maintained. The crowned eagles are adaptable, but with them suffering from habitat loss, it could mean they will move into the urban areas, putting them in conflict with humans. The African crowned eagle has since been listed as near threatened, and the main question on our minds is, can we save the species? The crowned eagle's main threat is habitat loss, with deforestation a huge contributing factor in Africa. They also face persecution in places where one has small livestock, as they are seen as a threat. The fact that the firstborn chick kills off the secondborn while in the nest doesn't help their population, and so the responsibilities lie with us to conserve them.
Throughout Africa, the crowned eagle is classified as near threatened. The main threats are loss of habitat, deforestation, loss of prey when forests are intact, and that's through bushmeat industry, and also direct persecution as a result of the perception that crowned eagles are a threat to livestock, pets, and also for the muti trade.
Birds in general play an important role in our biodiversity.
Everyone just has to play that little part for the environment. So if you play your part in saving water, in not polluting and not littering, you're already doing a big difference for every species, including our bird species. But for our birds specifically, using pesticides, rodenticides, it's really a threat even to our most common bird species. So changing that to using more environmentally friendly products is really one big change that everybody can do.
Should a situation arise where crowned eagles becomes a pest in one's home, the best thing would be to call the experts who can try and mitigate the problem, rather than killing them.
I think what we've got to do is just make people aware of them, and where there is a nest site, to try and avoid that nest, especially when they've got eggs and they're incubating eggs, because they're very sensitive to disturbance. They're very timid birds. Although they are big and powerful, they're very frightened of humans, and they will desert a nest if they are disturbed at the nest. And also if they're kept off the eggs for not very long, the eggs will become infertile and die.
In a developing country like South Africa, it is also advisable to consider wildlife and how it will get affected should we start moving into their territory.
One thing that people in Durban can do to help the research and help us understand the crowned eagles is to report the identification rings that we're placing on crowned eagles. The rings are color-coded and have a letter and number combination, and we need the date and time and the location that these individuals were seen. This helps us understand more about their movements, about the age structure of the population, and about mortalities.
That's all we have for you on this week's episode of Wild Treasures. Remember to join us again next week right here on ANN7. My name is Stefanie Jansen van Vuren. Till then, cheers.